That any criticism of you would be considered a criticism of science itself is quite dangerous.
And hurried up and said, I can do it. We got something in Wired magazine.
No. I think in usual fashion.
Came to support voting rights. But Republicans today can't and won't. Not a single Republican.
Joe Biden goes full partisan hack. Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci have some more fireworks in what seems to be like their 90th bout in a Senate hearing, and a lot more interesting stuff coming at you today on Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live on today. It is January 12th, the year of our Lord 2022. Getting things started is Joe Biden going completely partisan hacky, which is weird. We'll talk more about that in a second. But also, if you have some time to stick around, holy cow, the fireworks between Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci were off the charts yesterday in a Senate hearing, which featured the Dr./Senator Rand Paul going after the little guy from the CDC and the National Health Institute and chief advisor to the administration, Dr. Fauci, who's been wrong about a lot and never backs down from it. Also, for what it's worth, we replaced a human heart with a pig's heart. So there's that all coming up and more. But let's get started with this. I've talked about this plenty of times. We talked about this after Joe Biden. I spent the whole Friday episode talking about Joe Biden being a partisan hack now, which I'll admit, I thought when he came into office, look, do I agree with him on policy things? No, absolutely not. But throughout the majority of his Senate career, he'd been pretty dang moderate and pretty let's bring people together-y. For somewhere along the lines, all of that changed. Joe Biden spent, 140 years in the Senate, and like I said, was pretty reasonable, pretty moderate. And then January 20th of 2021, he decides to go full Bernie Sanders on his policy and full Chuck Schumer on the way he handles partisan issues. Holy cow, yesterday, Joe Biden was in Georgia, gave a speech there about the voting rights bill, which I am now doing what I complain that other more right-leaning outlets do, calling it the voting rights bill. No, let me rephrase that. He was pushing the federal government takeover of election laws, which is diametrically opposed to the Constitution of the United States, which says the states are required to, they leave it to the states to do voting laws. So that's the bill that he's pushing. He's pushing a bill in the Senate that mandates the federal takeover of elections. That's what it is. He was in Georgia yesterday, and over the last several months, Joe Biden has said things that have been absolutely insane and crazy damaging. I think one of the worst things that a sitting president of the United States has said regarding partisan policy was when he's called the Georgia voting law, the very reasonable Georgia voting law that really nobody who's being honest with themselves has a problem with, when he called that Jim Crow on steroids. Okay, so what we're saying here is that Jim Crow, when black people were beaten in the streets for having the audacity to vote, when there was threats of violence against black people, when black people were barred from voting in primaries, that Jim Crow, showing your ID to vote, registering in advance, and limiting the amount of mail ballots that go out, because that's how we've voted for decades, that is way worse than Jim Crow, which was happening in the 50s, 60s. Again, that comparison to me was one of the worst things a president has ever said in my mind. If you've got any liberal friends, and I know you do, conservatives have more liberal friends than liberals have conservative friends, click the little like button and click the little share button, because I think people need to be aware of this, because I know that you have some moderate Democrat friends. I know that you do. I do. And I think a lot of this stuff is going completely blind to them. They voted for Joe Biden because yeah, throughout his entire Senate career, kind of was a softie in terms of not taking super partisan sides. And now all of a sudden, something just flipped, and he is going full blown to the lefty partisan woke wall. And again, I'll be the first one to say it. When he got into office, I kind of thought, yeah, moderate guy. Like, do I agree with him? Did I vote for him? No. But moderate guy, nothing really to worry about. And then he did a full 180, turned into Bernie Sanders on the policy side and Chuck Schumer on the partisan hack side. I'm going to play a couple clips from his speech yesterday in Georgia. Then I got some pretty interesting tidbits from that. Watch out for this. Check this out from Joe Biden. These clips are kind of long, but you need to see this. Click again, the little share button thing. Your liberal friends need to see this because this is nuts.
Will you stand for democracy? Yes or no? And here's one thing every senator, every American should remember. History has never been kind to those who've sided with voter suppression over voters' rights. And it'll even be less kind for those who side with election subversion. So I ask every elected official in America, how do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace?
Yikes.
Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide. To defend our elections, to defend our democracy. And if you do that, you will not be alone.
That was the president yesterday in the state of Georgia talking about election laws. So what he's doing, and we'll play the clip after this where he's talking about the filibuster. There is a federal takeover of election bill in the Senate. He wants the federal government, because the federal government is so good at everything. Everything the federal government does is super efficient. It always works. There's never any problems with it. But Joe Biden and the Democrats want federal government to take over elections effectively. That is the bill they're pushing. And guess what? Lo and behold, they don't have the votes for it. Now, if they were to get rid of the filibuster, they still got to get Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, the guy from Montana, who I keep forgetting his name, all of these pretty middle of the road, I would even say some conservative Democrats in the Senate think, yeah, this is not a good idea at all. So they still have to get those people to vote for it, but Joe Biden is saying that this is important enough, which it is not, to get rid of the filibuster, which would effectively destroy the Senate. Now, if you don't really know about the filibuster and what it is, they need 60 votes for cloture to move on to the voting to where it's a majority. So in order to stop the debate in the Senate, they need 60 votes. That is the filibuster rule. They're saying, no, let's just go straight to voting, and then along party lines, half and half with Kamala Harris breaking a tie, that's how we're going to vote on things, which is, again, a crazy way of doing things. Senator Chuck Schumer said in a speech not all that many years ago, the Senate is the cooling saucer to the House's hot cup of milk, which it is. It absolutely is. That was the way the federal government was designed to operate. The Senate was the more reasoned body, and Congress, I've said this many times before, any quack can get elected to Congress. Congress, they're nuts over there. The Senate, at least, though, is tempered in their approach and need to actually debate and agree on things in order to get anything passed. What Joe Biden and the Democrats are trying to do right now is get rid of the sensibility of the Senate and effectively ruin the Senate. Listen to this next clip from the president, again, talking about the filibuster and voting laws.
Came to support voting rights. But Republicans today can't and won't. Not a single Republican has displayed the courage to stand up to a defeated president to protect America's right to vote. Not one. Not one.
So that clip was actually more of a less filibustery and more this voting rights needs to pass. We talked about this pre-January 6th because the entire narrative on the lefty side has been, well, Republicans or conservatives don't believe the elections, and that's the problem that we have. Yeah, except for that's not the case. Pretty much, there's a bunch of people on both sides that have lost faith in the elections, which I think is the big problem. My entire screed on Friday was that is the big problem. Political violence is terrible, and also elections are kind of a toss-up right now. We don't actually know. And Hillary Clinton and 30% of Hillary Clinton voters, like we talked about last week, didn't believe the 2016 election. So this is not just a one-side, one-party issue. This is an issue that everybody is going to have to deal with, and we have to figure out how to get our election system back on track. And the way we do it is not the federal government takeover of it, which eliminates pretty much all voter ID rules. The confidence in the election goes out the window if the federal government takes it over. And that is the biggest problem that we have. And unfortunately, nowadays, in 2024, maybe even in 2022, I think we're in a place where neither side, whoever wins, whoever loses, the loser seems like they're not going to buy the election results. And that is a big problem. Well, how do we fix it? Probably go back to the way we've been voting for the last, century. You show your ID to your local polling place organizer. You get a ballot, you vote in private, you put it in a concealed envelope and shove it in the box. And then they're counted in the full view of the public. Seems like it would work. Maybe I'm crazy. That, I think, is the only way we actually get back to some sort of belief in the elections on both sides, really. Now, Democrats in Congress and in the Senate, and including President Biden, would say that, no, we can't do that because it's way too difficult for people to vote. Okay, that's the argument you want to make. Again, Joe Biden was saying that going back to a more rudimentary way of voting is Jim Crow on steroids. Showing your ID to vote, proving that you're a U.S. citizen, is way, way worse than beating black people in the streets, said Joe Biden. Again, one of the worst things I think a president has said. And he apparently hasn't backed off of that stance. The speech in Georgia yesterday was huge when it comes to that sort of stuff. A couple things on the Georgia speech that I thought were interesting. Remember Stacey Abrams ran for governor in the state of Georgia, which is where Joe Biden gave his speech? She didn't show up. Wonder why? What I think what Stacey Abrams' campaign and her herself are probably seeing is that Joe Biden is so unpopular amongst Republicans, independents, and also Democrats. Joe Biden is so unpopular, there ain't no way she's going to be seen on stage with him. And I think that is a big problem that Joe Biden has. Again, the sitting president of the United States comes to your state, if you're Stacey Abrams, to talk about your issue. Remember, Stacey Abrams still to this day has not conceded the Georgia gubernatorial election. And the sitting president of the United States comes to your state to talk about voting integrity and sweeping changes to the way we do voting, and she doesn't show up. What does that mean to you? That means that Stacey Abrams thinks that Joe Biden is so unpopular, she does not want to be seen on a stage with him. Isn't that fascinating? Let me get to this. If you have time to stick around, or if you want to share this with friends, holy cow, these are always my favorite things. Pay-per-view UFC fights, boxing matches, pale in comparison to the Rand Paul, Dr. Fauci bouts in the Senate committee hearings. We got some great clips coming up from this fantastic bout yesterday between Dr. Fauci and Dr. Rand Paul. But before we get to that, I got to talk about this. Inflation is on the rise. We talked about it. Actually, I have a story here. Holy cow, my rundown closed. But inflation is through the roof. In all of 21, inflation is now up 7%, which is a 40-something year high. What are you going to do? Because inflation, like we all know, is a hidden tax on your savings. If you have a savings account, if you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, inflation just taxed that 7%. Holy cow, that is a huge amount of money, especially if you have, even if you have $100,000, they just took $7,000 of value out of your account. So how do you protect your savings against the inflation monster? Well, our friends at Birch Gold are the best way to learn how to get your savings into a gold-backed IRA or even physical gold if you want that. If you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, you can transfer that into a gold-backed IRA with our friends at Birch Gold. And that's the best way that you can hedge your bets against inflation, which is stealing your savings. The U.S. government is doing everything it can to sabotage the U.S. dollar. And the best way that you can protect yourself is investing in gold. Well, how do I learn how to do that? Well, you can text Jobob, Jobob, to 989898 and get the most informational 20-page little packet that you've ever had. You might, by the end of reading that thing, you're going to be more of an expert than I am on inflation and the way you can hedge it with gold. So get your free, no cost, no obligation packet from our friends at Birch Gold by texting Jobob to 989898. Protect your savings against the government sabotaging the value of the U.S. dollar. Back to this. This is my favorite thing. I love when this happens. Dr. Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci face off in the Senate committee hearings. These are some long clips, like a minute so. Stick around. I tried to cut them down to like the most poignant parts, but there was too much of it that was too good. I'm going to hand it over to Senator Dr. Rand Paul grilling Dr. Fauci. Check this out.
The idea that a government official like yourself would claim unilaterally to represent science, that any criticism of you would be considered a criticism of science itself, is quite dangerous. Central planning, whether it be of the economy or of science, is risky because of the fallibility of the planner. It would not be so catastrophic if the planner were simply one physician in Peoria. Then the mistakes would only affect that physician's patients, the people who chose that physician. But when the planner is a government official like yourself who rules by mandate, the errors are compounded and become much more harmful. A planner who believes he is the science leads to an arrogance that justifies, in his mind, using government resources to smear and to destroy the reputations of other scientists who disagree with him. In an email exchange with Dr. Collins, you conspire, and I quote here directly from the email, to create a quick and devastating published takedown of three prominent epidemiologists from Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. Apparently, there's a lot of fringe epidemiologists at Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. And you quote in the email that they, or from Dr. Collins, and you agree that they are fringe. And immediately there's this takedown effort. A published takedown, though, doesn't exactly conjure up the image of a dispassionate scientist. Instead of engaging them on the merits, you and Dr. Collins sought to smear them as fringe and take them down. And not in journals, in lay press. This is not only antithetical to the scientific method, it's the epitome of cheap politics, and it's reprehensible, Dr. Fauci.
So that was Senator Rand Paul grilling Dr. Fauci on the committee in which Dr. Fauci is trying to make sure that he's got all his bows tied up in a knot and get his ducks in a row. I think this is hilarious. So Dr. Rand Paul was talking about how Dr. Fauci, if you remember, was it Face the Nation, Meet the Press, might have been 60 Minutes, where Dr. Fauci said, well, if people are criticizing me, they're criticizing the science. I am the science, says Dr. Fauci. Now, Rand Paul's entire takedown is pretty eloquent and pretty well spoken. I, for one, would love to see Rand Paul start hamming it up. Hold on, everybody, when Dr. Fauci enters the room. Hold on. Clear the way. The science is here. Everyone observe the science walking into the room. Dr. Fauci is the science. I would love to see him start hamming it up and making a little bit more of a mockery of Dr. Fauci's analysis, because at this point, it's just funny. Dr. Fauci saying all of these sorts of things. Look, there was a Freedom of Information Act email. I'm not sure if we played it in this clip. If not, it's in the next clip where Rand Paul is talking about, look, you clearly, the former NIH director, Dr. Francis Collins, and Dr. Fauci clearly had an email chain going together trying to discredit people from Harvard, scientists from Harvard and Oxford and a bunch of other prestigious schools. And It's in the public. We have the email, Dr. Fauci. He goes on to say, Rand Paul does, that, well, then you put it in Wired magazine, the epitome of medical and health information, Wired magazine. We'll get to that clip in just a second. But again, I would love to see, look, again, does Rand Paul have super eloquent way of putting things? Yes, he does. And I think they're great. And I think they're effective. And I think people who are really intent on listening to the facts and figures listen to Rand Paul and think that's great. But I, for one, would love to see him ham it up, especially when Dr. Fauci walks into the room. Just the big ovation of, let's everyone stop what you're doing. The science is here. But we'll see if that happens in the next bout between Dr. Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci. All right, this is a little bit longer of a clip, but this is coming some fireworks, some Dr. Fauci kind of pushing back, saying no, that didn't happen, but it did. Rand Paul has the emails. They're in front of his face, sir. Dr. Fauci says you're misconstruing this, but he's not. He's literally reading them verbatim. Check this clip out.
Do you really think it's appropriate to use your $420,000 salary to attack scientists that disagree with you?
The email you're referring to was an email of Dr. Collins to me. If you look at the email
That you responded to and hurried up and said, I can do it. We got something in Wired magazine.
No. I think in usual fashion, Senator, you are distorting everything about me.
Did you ever object to Dr. Collins' characterization of them as friends? Did you write back to Dr. Collins and say, no, they're not friends, they're esteemed scientists, and it would be beneath me
I did
to
not
do that? You responded to him that you would do it, and you immediately got an article in Wired, and you sent it back to him and said, hey, look, I've got him. I nailed him in Wired of all scientific
That's not
publications.
what went on. There you go again.
That
You
was your
just do the
response.
same thing every hearing.
That was your response. And
So-
this wasn't the only time. So your desire to take
You're
down
absolutely
people.
incorrect. As usual, Senator, you are
No.
incorrect almost everything you
Well,
said.
no, you deny, but the emails tell the truth of this.
No.
This wasn't the only time. Your desire to take down those who disagree with you didn't stop with Harvard, Oxford, and Stanford. You conspired with Peter Daszak, who you communicated with privately, and other members of the scientific community that wrote opinion pieces for Nature. 5 of them signed a paper for Nature, an opinion piece. 17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, there's no way this could have come
That
from
was
the lab?
not me. What I
Did you talk with any of those scientists
but
privately?
you keep distorting
you?
the truth. It is stunning how you do
Did you talk
that.
to any of the
Some of the comments coming in are a little bit funny. Lisa says, Fauci, what a twisted narcissist. Brian, this one is very funny. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! I love it, Brian. Thanks for that. So yeah, Dr. Paul just kind of saying, hey man, this is what you did. I'm laying out what exactly you did. We have the Freedom of Information Act emails that you sent to Dr. Collins and then published them in the esteemed medical journal, Wired magazine. We got him, Francis Collins. We got him in Wired. Dr. Paul, Dr. Senator Rand Paul, because I think people forget that he's also a doctor. I think a lot of your lefty media takes, this crazy conspiracy theorist Rand Paul. Leave out the fact that he also has a medical degree. Not like a PhD doctor like Dr. Jill Biden. No. Dr. Rand Paul actually is a medical doctor. He's an optometrist, but at the same time, he understands diseases probably better than most people in the Senate who aren't, in fact, doctors. Dr. Fauci, for one, doesn't think that he has any merit whatsoever, despite all of the damning evidence presented against Dr. Fauci. That's kind of, there's not really much to say about that other than that this is hilarious. And I love every time Rand Paul gets a shot at Dr. Fauci to tear him down, rhetorically speaking, because I know now, I'm going to get into that. Oh, this is great. This is, did you hear about this? There is oh, you know what? I'm going to have to pull it up on my phone because the window that has all of the information that we show every single day got closed out. So I'm going to read it here. But before I read this, there's a really interesting medical procedure that I'm not sure ethically how to think about it. It's fascinating and a great step forward in the name of science, but holy cow, where does it stop? I'll get to that story in just a quick second after I tell you about Birch Gold. Our friends at Birch Gold want to help you protect your savings. What are gas prices like where you are? What are food prices like where you are? 2021 ended the year at 7% inflation. 7%, that is huge, which is basically a 7% tax on your savings. The government is doing everything it can to sabotage the value of the US dollar. And will you have any less physical dollars? No, but will that money buy you less and less when it comes to inflation going through the roof and not being transitory? Yes. So how do you hedge your bets against inflation? Well, precious metals have historically been the best way to hold value. From the dawn of time, people have liked gold and silver and other precious metals. The best way that you can invest in precious metals nowadays is not necessarily backing up a truck full of gold, which you still can do that and it would still be just as effective. But our friends at Birch Gold have the best way for you to get your savings via IRA, via 401k into a gold-backed IRA. You can text JOBOB to 989898 and learn how you can protect your savings against the inflation monster that Joe Biden is continuing to feed on a daily basis, and it worries me. How do you learn how to invest in gold? Text JOBOB, Jobob, to 989898. Get a no obligation, no risk-free, no nothing. You don't owe them anything. They're just going to give you all of the information you need to at least start the process of getting into gold to protect your savings. Again, JOBOB to 989898. I'm friend to friend. You need to do this. Back to some headlines. Like I said, we're having some little bit of a technical difficulty, so I'm going to pull this up here. Oh, you know what? I did want to bring up the actual inflation stuff that's going on. Inflation across the U.S., this is from the Wall Street Journal. Inflation closed out 2021 at its highest level since 1982 as a robust consumer demand, exorbitant pandemic-related charges, and supply shortages steepened. The Labor Department said the Consumer Price Index, which measures what consumers pay for goods and services, rose 7% in December. That is a lot. 7%. 7%. Now, maybe you think 7%, oh, that's half of a tip if you go to a restaurant. Yeah, but on every single food item or any item you have, everything going up 7% is a lot of money. If you spend $1,000 a month, that's an extra $70. What can you get for $70? I can make $70 stretch a long way. And that's if you only spend $1,000 a month. If you spend more than that, that number just goes up. In December, it was up 6.8% in November. That was the fastest pace since 1982 and marked the third straight month in which inflation exceeded 6%. Oh boy. So there's that. I want to get to this last kind of our wrap up, end of the day kind of story. This is interesting. This is just a headline that I saw that I thought was fascinating. Scientists have transferred a pig heart into a human. Okay. I don't know. I have some ethical questions on that. I don't know how okay I am with that. I think it's a great leap forward in modern medicine. Should we be doing it? I don't actually know. Maybe I'll think about it from an ethics standpoint. But again, it's a medical marvel. David Bennett, 57, is doing well 3 days after the experimental 7-hour procedure in Baltimore. Doctors say the transplant was considered the last hope of saving Mr. Bennett's life, although it is not yet clear of his long-term chances of survival. He needed the transplant. Basically, doctors grew a modified heart in a pig and then put it into a human, which is, again, medical miracle, but ethically, I'm not entirely sure how that works. Interesting. Reading some of the comments here. Yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Oh, shoot. We should have got to the Pfizer guy. I'm seeing a comment in here about the Pfizer CEO talking about more shots. Maybe we'll bring that up tomorrow. That is interesting. Tomorrow, we've got a great guest. Are you on Gitter? Are you on the social media platforms? You should be. If you're not, you can follow me on all of the social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB on Instagram, Twitter. I'm going to get my Gitter logo thing up here too, but I'm also on Gitter, just at JOBOB. You can find me on all of those social media platforms. We can have this conversation. We can continue the conversation. I see a lot that you guys send me, and a lot of it. The pig story, somebody sent it to me like, yo, this is crazy. And that's why that's here. So you can send me stuff, JOBOB, on any of your social media platforms. I'm also on Gitter. Speaking of Gitter, we're going to have the CEO and founder of Gitter on our show tomorrow, talking about this whole idea of social media and how it's transforming and all that sort of stuff. So be sure to tune to that, and also follow me on any of the social media platforms that you have. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of Daily Caller Live. We will see you then. God bless America.